who couldn't be here. So you should get that okay on your screen. They missed the music, but welcome everyone for being here. Great to see you all tonight. Hope you're doing well. So I'm so excited because of had this thought for a while to do something I've tried in the past, actually, to get a little cohort together. But it seems like this is like really, there's something happening. There's a confluence of good energy right now, maybe post-pandemic or just people feeling in the right place in their lives to explore this. And so we are, gonna head out on this learning adventure. So tonight, I'm gonna start, share my screen. I have a little PowerPoint. Essentially, we will, I'll talk a bit about B'nai Mitzvah, what it's all about. Then we will have an opportunity to do some meeting with each other, just to share and to meet one another. And then we will get into tachlis, sort of brass tacks about how I envision this program going. So great, and I know folks will probably trickle in as we come, hoping to just keep it to an hour tonight. And with that, of course, entertain any and all questions that you have. So let me get my, oops, I wasn't ready. Oops, okay, hold on, let me get my PowerPoint at the right spot. That's always a thing. Okay. I was in the thing, like, you know, the rule of Zoom is you can't just share your screen. You have to say, and now I'm going to share my screen. So I can say that now I'm going to share my screen. From the beginning. All right. So here we are, adult BMitzvah. You'll share a little bit why, what the terms I use or whatnot. So excellent. So I already mentioned this today. So tonight, for our introduction, tonight we will I'll talk about what is Bar Bat B'nai Brit Mitzvah. What is it? We'll have an opportunity to meet each other, and then we'll talk in some brass tacks for how I envision this program going, as I said already. So, all right, got some more folks coming in here. Okay, so what is B'nai Mitzvah? Good question. So here's a text from Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot is an ancient Jewish ethical text. It dates from around the 2nd, 3rd centuries CE, and part of the larger body of work called the Mishnah, which is the body of text that sort of follows the Jewish Bible, the Hebrew Bible, in terms of interpretation and expanding the corpus of Jewish literature. And so Pirkei Avot is a wonderful text. It literally means the chapters of our ancestors, Pirkei Avot, but it's really an ethical text teaching a variety of different life lessons and whatnot. So here's one about the stages of life. So Judah ben Tema, the name of the rabbi, used to say, at 5 years of age, the study of scripture. At 10, the study of Mishnah. At 13, subject to the commandments. At 15, the study of Talmud. At 18, the wedding canopy. At 20, for the pursuit of livelihood. At 30, the peak of strength. At 40, wisdom. At 50, able to give counsel. At 60, old age. At 70, fullness of years. At 80, the age of strength. At 90, a bent body. At 100, as good as dead and gone completely out of the world. So so yeah, anybody have any reflections on that text? What is that? What's going on in this text? You could just feel free to unmute yourself and share.
A time for every season, or however that expression goes.
Yeah, nice. You want to say more? It's about
well, regardless of whether one gets married at 18 or is as good as dead at 100, it's at each time of one's life, there's something that's the right thing for that individual to do.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Everybody has something to offer, contribute no matter what age you are. Yeah, anyone else? Maybe you're finding yourself in this continuum, really. Am I wise? Am I able to give counsel? I don't feel old at 60. What's going on here? Any other, anybody else want to reflect? There's no right answer.
Yeah,
Yeah, Nancy.
well, it's interesting that at 13, subject to the commandments, subject to them, which means, in a position to choose to follow them.
Mhm.
And so in order to choose to, of course, I'm centering on that because 13 is the age,
Yeah,
but to choose to follow them, you need to understand a whole bunch of stuff about yourself, about the commandments, about why laws are important, a whole bunch of things. So I just find that interesting.
yeah, great. And that's where we're gonna lead, because obviously the third, if you're familiar with bar bat mitzvah, 13 is a number that stands out, because that is the age of bar or bat mitzvah. And I think to your point, Nancy, if we look at this, the learning starts earlier, right? Yeah, you start learning earlier. You're not subject to the commandments, as it were, until 13, but you're supposed to start learning earlier than that, maybe to have that foundation, to be able to live into those. Yeah, Richard.
It strikes me that the wording there is subject to the commandments. Whether you know anything about them or not, whether you've been bar, bat mitzvah, b'nai mitzvah, I think you're subject to them. Those are the laws, that we're going to be held accountable for. So if I'm going to be held accountable for something, I should probably know what that entails. And I think I'm subject to them one way or another.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we're subject to civil law, right? Whether or not we know them or not, we can't. So it's on us to learn. I can't say like, well, I didn't choose to not murder. I didn't, choose that. We're subject to those laws, of civil laws. So you're right. There's a sense of responsibility of learning that goes into that as well. To abide by them, but to learn and to know. Yeah. Any other reflections? So yeah. So as was pointed out, as Nancy pointed out, I think the as Leslie said, there's something, and this I think is a confluence going to what we're doing today, because here we are at this opportunity to do an adult bar bat b'nai mitzvah. So we might find ourselves somewhere on this other continuum, later on in the continuum. And at the same time celebrating something that traditionally is celebrated at the age of 13. But for a variety of reasons, each one of us comes into this room with a different history, a different background, and different reason for bringing here. We'll have the opportunity to share a little bit with that. So yeah, and something. There's always something to glean and to give. And I think that we're different people, right, at 18 or 20 than we are at 50 or 60. And each, as it says, each is a sort of valid age for offering something, and that's okay. It's okay to not be able to give counsel at 20 because maybe we're just starting out and we need to learn a few things before we do that. But the subject here is 13, subject to the commandments, is teaching this idea that, at the age of 13, traditionally within Jewish practice, one becomes bar or bat mitzvah. And what that means literally is son or daughter of the commandments. And this idea that you are now subject to the commandments at the age of 13. So in a traditional sense that if you were, I guess, eating pork, say, before the age of 13, it wasn't on you. It was on your parents or it was on somebody else. But once you turn 13, it becomes on you. So this gets expanded. Right? As I mentioned, this is a second, third century text, and this becomes sort of expanded in our tradition and a focal point. It's something we think about and understand. So interestingly enough, the idea of a bar bat b'nai mitzvah is not in the Torah. It's not found anywhere in the Torah. This idea of landing on 13 as an age for subject to the commandments is developed later. I mean, there are different ages of maturity in the Torah as well. There are different ages, one would say, begin to serve as a priest, or at different age, one would serve to fight in the army. And then the Torah alludes to times like this during census times, like take a census of everybody 20 and older, for example. So there are ages, but the idea of 13 comes a bit later, and it's really tied to originally physical maturity. That if at the age of 13 one begins to enter puberty, begins to develop physically into an adult, then that becomes the time that one is seen as an adult. Literally, if you actually look at the Talmud, it speaks of physical maturity, that one would become subject to the commandments at when they become physically mature. That becomes a bit, I guess, I don't know, cumbersome to sort of each person to figure out when that is or to judge. So it becomes normalized around the age of 13. And bar or bat mitzvah is a status, right? It's a status. One becomes bar or bat mitzvah when they turn 13. And nothing, just by turning 13, you become a bar or bat mitzvah. Just as soon as you turn 21, you can buy alcohol, right? You don't have to do anything to change that. You don't have to register or sign up. You just are. You know, you have to show your ID. They make sure that you're over 21, and then you go. I was at T-Mobile Field. I had to show my ID. That was kind of nice, but I guess they doubted me. And that's kind of the status. But as we know, over time in our tradition, it becomes celebrated, and it becomes a ceremony, a rite of passage, that at the age of 13, we celebrate our youth through a ritual of bar or bat mitzvah, of usually in the context of a Shabbat service, of inviting them to read from the Torah and to recite prayers and lead in prayers and to give a teaching on the Torah portion. And so over time, even post-rabbinic times, over through medieval times and whatnot, becomes elaborate and a thing to celebrate, right? A thing to celebrate. I don't know anything of ice sculptures or chopped liver sculptures in the Talmud, but I guess that comes much later. But so that becomes a status that is attained just by dint of being 13. Then you celebrate it. So on one hand, everybody here is bar or bat mitzvah because or b'nai mitzvah or BMitzvah because you're over the age of 13, I assume. Yet we recognize that there is something powerful in this ritual and something that we want to tap into and celebrate for ourselves, because for whatever reason, at the age of 13, we didn't. We might have, grown up in a more traditional setting, in which and primarily girls were not celebrated with a bat mitzvah ceremony, or maybe we grew up in a Jewish household, but that wasn't really connected to Jewish community, and so it just didn't register. Or some of us were not Jewish at the age of 13, and so wanting to celebrate that as well. So all of these, whatever brings you to this point, it's like the status is there, but the celebration of the need to affirm is what we're celebrating. So that's what I mean. The ritual acknowledges, it doesn't create, unlike, say, like a wedding ritual that creates something, right? That creates a marriage. You can't, it's the ritual that creates it. Bar mitzvah ritual affirms and acknowledges something. And over time too, as I mentioned, thinking about the history of bar b'nai mitzvah in our country, or in Judaism, the first bat mitzvah for a girl was held 100 years ago. by Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, the founder of the Reconstructionist movement, with his daughter, Judith Kaplan Eisenstein. But even then, it didn't become normative until later as well to celebrate girls' bat mitzvah. And I threw this other Perkei Avot text here because this is something that I think sort of forms the backbone of a lot of bat mitzvah celebrations and acknowledgments. I know it does here at our congregation, and teaches Shimon the Righteous used to say, the world stands on three things: on Torah, on temple service, prayer, and the practice of loving kindness. That when we say that a child is an adult in the community, then they are subject to the commandments, as that first teaching said, but they are in a way responsible and have agency now in a variety of these aspects. So in the Torah, both in the learning and teaching, in prayer, in service, their own personal prayer practice and leading the community, and acting in Gimilut Chasadim, Tikkun Olam, acting in the world in a new way, in a way. And there are a number of, should add, when we say, we often talk about this, the becoming an adult in the Jewish community, there are certain ritual aspects to Jewish communal life that are reserved for those over the age of 13. For example, reciting the Aliyah blessing over the Torah when it's read publicly, counting in a minyan is a big one, the quorum of 10 adult Jews that are needed for certain prayers, including the mourner's Kaddish, that you have to be over the age of 13 to be counted in that, and some others. Yeah, so that's what we say. But I think in a broader sense, it's the sense of responsibility for taking on your own spiritual life, and that is so that is something. I mean, just thinking. I mean, I know we're here to talk about adult BMitzvah, but let's say, like, when both of our boys turned 13, became bar mitzvah, we sort of gave them, they had the opportunity to then choose. Like, we keep a kosher home in our home, but we said, you don't have to keep kosher anymore if you don't want to. That's not, it's up to you to sort of make your own choices here. Not in our home is our home, but wherever. So it's we gave them that, we sort of emphasized that piece of it. So what is adult? And I'm calling this Brit Mitzvah after a colleague of mine, and I'll share why. I think there's a lot of different terminology. So I say it's not exactly a makeup, right? It's not for some. It might be, I want to honor that something might feel lacking or wanting to celebrate, or for some reason it didn't happen at 13. I've heard lots of stories. Sometimes people move communities or whatever, or something happens around that time that impedes that. So it can be a makeup, but it can be something new, because what I look at it as a real, in the second point, an affirmation of your Jewish identity, a connection to Jewish community, that you are, in a public sense, as it says here, it's a public ritual, just as a child's B'nai Mitzvah is. It's an affirmation for you. I mean, everyone who is here, again, brings their own reasons and is here wanting to affirm your Jewish identity. I know all of you are active and engaged in Judaism and Jewish community, and this is a real opportunity to, one, take on learning, more focused learning as an adult, and to celebrate your efforts, because we don't. And there was a great article, and Michelle, you sent it to me, right after I sent out the invitation. I should have, if I had waited a little bit longer and I had gotten it, I would have linked to it. Maybe you saw it, but in the New York Times, around the time that I sent, and I've saved the article so I can send it too if you haven't seen it. There was an article in the New York Times about celebrating adult rites of passage, and it's not something that traditionally faith communities have done. Not just Judaism, but Christianity and whatnot. So the ability to develop ritual around different rites of passage that we celebrate throughout our lives. There's the things that we might think about, wedding, divorce, or death, But then there's retirement, or then there's changing jobs or moving homes. There are these moments in our adult lives that are worthy of recognition, and the ability to ritualize them just makes it very special. And so I think that this is a way too, in this case, it's taking your Jewish identity, your deep connection, and affirming it in a public way and in a meaningful way. So when conceiving of this, over the years here at TBH, I have mentioned I've tried to get a group together. It's never fully gelled, but we have had a few people who've done individual adult BMitzvah. And whenever I work with them, I ask them, well, you're an adult, you don't have to do what the kids do, you can form something, but they all kind of want to do what the kids do. I think it's very, so I'm leaving that open, sort of thinking about the way I've envisioned it is sort of some of those elements, but also as adults, I know you're all creative and interesting, engaging people, that you're not necessarily sullen 13-year-olds that have to sort of force in a way, so we can explore that together. But I envision this as an adult BMitzvah as being something that similar elements to kids, but also open. And again, I'd say your reasons are yours. You all come, and we'll have the opportunity to share in a few moments, at least in smaller groups, to share about what brings you. As I said, there's different reasons that we might not have had bar mitzvah at the age of 13, but yet now seems to be the right time. And so I sort of been floating back and forth with different terms, and Brit Mitzvah is the newest term. One, so and this is a conversation that's happening across the Jewish world as well, about how we refer to these ceremonies, primarily because Hebrew as a gendered language, using the terms bar or bat, the mitzvah, is you're automatically gendering it. For some, that's fine. You don't mind, you're taking on your gender identity. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Less so, but Brit provides another sort of avenue. It's a non-gendered term, which means covenant in Hebrew. So a Brit Mitzvah is almost like saying a covenant of the commandments. And in some ways it fits more of an adult ceremony, because a bar bat is a son or daughter of, and we're all children of other people in some way, but yet recognizing as an adult. So I sort of leave it, I just sort of use the different terms. They might have different meaning and import for you, but I want to offer that fluidity and flexibility in terms of how we refer. So Brit Mitzvah is another opportunity. So I'm going to, so let's take a few moments of meeting each other. We have about sort of half the folks who had mentioned their interest are here. We have a big group, which is great, and we'll talk about that. But what I'd like to do is sort of break us into, we might be able to forget that second bullet point. We might be able to meet everybody. We're going to do some quick rounds of meeting and sharing through breakout rooms. I'll just invite you to tell us who you are. You can just say your name, tell us why you're here in a sentence or two, like what brings you to this moment. And just as an icebreaker, what's something you were into when you were 13? Think back when you were 13, what was an interest or something that you were excited about or interested in, or, like, I don't know, sports or movies or music, or what at 13, what would you like at 13 to share that. So we got 1, 2, 3. Oh, we got a double here. It's Michelle and Richard and Michelle. So I gotta remember we got doubles in the room as well, but we'll see. We're just gonna, hopefully we'll have you'll meet most people, but I can't guarantee you'll meet everybody at this one moment. So just gonna assign breakout rooms, and I'll call us back in about 4 minutes. So again, this is not an elaborate introduction. Just tell us who you are, say a little bit about what brings you here and something that you were into when you were 13, and just so we can have a nice, and over the course of this learning journey, we'll have the opportunity to learn more about each other, but just by way of introduction. So 4 minutes, I'll call us back, and then I'll recreate the groups, and we'll shuffle it up like 2 or 3 times. All right, there you go.
And if you could throw me back into the breakout room, that'd be great.
All right, there we go. Oh, I see that last one. Everyone was forced out, maybe because it was the shorter time, but nobody left early. So that was great. Good. Well, I hope you had the opportunity to meet one another, maybe meet some new folks and reconnect with others that you might already know and maybe learn something about them. Maybe it was a good exercise for you to think about what you were into when you were 13 and what that was like. So great. Let me jump in back to Tachlis. So I'm going to run through how I envision this program going, and then we'll talk about questions and things like that. And I sort of tonight I'm just presenting it in broad strokes, with like idea wise, and content will come as well. So here's going back to my share screen here. And recording in progress. Okay, good. So how do I see this looking like? So I envision us, it's taking it on, and I know this is introductory, so I might choose not to, that we would meet every month for a class of learning, about an hour and a half monthly class. That's not a Judaism 101 class, but it's just an opportunity to deepen our Jewish knowledge and to explore together aspects of Jewish tradition, spirituality, practice. Again, I'm not getting into the specifics of how I envision each session, but sort of thinking about that broadly. Because again, as thinking about this idea or this thing that here, this is an opportunity to affirm and deepen our connection with Judaism and Jewish spirituality, that we will do learning together, study, conversation, engaging together as a group on aspects of Jewish practice, spirituality, and whatnot. So again, it's not a 101. I mean, it's accessible in the sense of depending on your background of Jewish knowledge, but it's not meant to be like a 101 introduction to Judaism class, but to really sort of learn as we go. If you are interested in a Judaism 101 class, in addition to, luckily, there's one available. There's one through the Washington Coalition of Rabbis that I participate in. And if you're interested in that, I can send you the link to register, but this would be something different. Alongside that, I envision us doing a monthly Hevruta as well, which is where we have the opportunity to break up into small groups that you would find a Hevruta, a study partner, to meet also once a month in between classes to do some one-on-one learning. It's Havruta, which is Aramaic for friend or partner, is a traditional way of Jewish study where you would study something together and talk about it. And it could be with another person, it could be with a small group. I mean, maybe I know some folks here are coupled. Both couples are parts of the couple are doing it. You might want to do it together. You might not want to. You might want to do it together. So that's we can go into details about how that would how that work and sort of create those groups. But essentially, that there would be a Havruta learning based on the themes of the class that we've just done. And also, I would invite as part of this to engage in a practice of writing a spiritual autobiography. And I'll have details and frameworks for it, but sort of while there's cohort learning, there's small group learning to do your own personal learning, and nothing that has to be for publication or for even putting it out in the world, but an exercise for you to explore, again, your own where you are spiritually and how you engage, and to sort of flesh that out, to write in a way a spiritual autobiography. And then as part of that, to prepare as a group for a public ritual that would be as part of a Shabbat morning service. I envision it in late May or early June, around close to Shavuot, which is our Jewish holiday in which we celebrate the giving of Torah. So it's a potent time of year to celebrate taking on sort of new covenant and new learning, and to be able to celebrate as a group as part of a service. And so again, I'm just saying broadly, we'll get into details as we go about different parts and whatnot, and think how we're going to break that up. But overall, sort of imagining, again, like we celebrate with the kids, some aspect of Torah study and Torah teaching, prayers, leading, engagement with prayer, attending services throughout the year as well. Sort of deepen that, having an aliyah to the Torah. That's very much, if we think about a traditional bar mitzvah celebration, excuse me, having that aliyah, having that blessing of the Torah that one wouldn't have prior to being 13 is kind of a focal point. And doing some acts of service for our community, and using this opportunity to celebrate, to have a celebration, a communal celebration of it. That the party, as it were, a party or some sort of celebration is part of it, I think, as well, because it should be fun and celebratory. So that's kind of the four parts of how I see this going. Now, question might be, what about Hebrew? Like, what about Hebrew? As you might be familiar, Hebrew is a language of Jewish prayer and Torah. Because, I recognize different people have different learning interests and skills. And I wouldn't say that Hebrew is required for this program, that you have to do Hebrew learning as part of it. I sort of envision it as kind of a separate track. You might want to. And to that end, I'm going to offer also a Hebrew reading class in the fall, followed by a trope or cantillation class. So if you envisioned reading from the Torah scroll and chanting the Torah, then yes, we can make that happen. If that wasn't of interest to you and you don't want to commit to learning Hebrew, then fine, that's also fine. You can find expression in other ways as well. But it's an option, kind of a side thing. So if you already have reading knowledge of Hebrew, you can wait to the trope class if you want to learn Torah cantillation. If you don't, you can do the Hebrew class. You could even take it again. It could be the third or fourth time you take the class. So it's but that's what we'll do. And if you can just take the Hebrew reading and not do the cantillation if you want, whatever, it's going to be the option. But that's, but just to say that as part of this, the overall program doesn't have to be a part of it. And I think there are other options too, as I mentioned earlier, sort of looking at it like the kids, but also sort of honoring your thoughts and ideas as well. There are a number of other options that we could include into this, sort of naming aspects. You might have a Jewish name, you might not have a Jewish name, you might want to take on a Hebrew name as part of this process, and we could work on that sort of individually. Naming talit, customary when talit is one of those things that the prayer shawl is one of those things that's one doesn't wear until they're 13. So when our youngers celebrate their BMitzvah, we present them with a talit for the first time. Maybe you have a talit already that you wear. Maybe you don't, and you want to incorporate that into this ceremony as well. We could work on that. And I would invite you, if you have individual learning goals that you want to make a part of this process, then we can do that. Then we can work one-on-one, or maybe there's a small cohort. I just was earlier when I was preparing this, I was just brainstorming to myself, maybe you want to use this as an opportunity to do some genealogy in your family. Like I'm taking on this commitment, and I want to learn more about my family, where I come from as part of it. Or maybe you're interested in exploring more Jewish history, how you fit into the chain of Jewish history. That's not a core part of this, but you might want to take that on. You might want to do some journaling about Judaism or maybe another artistic expression that you might want to take on, or music, art. I'm delighted to work with you individually on that. And if there's a small cohort that wants to get together to do aspects together, we can do that. And your own ideas. Again, your own ideas. I want to make this a meaningful experience for you. And I don't want to just fit everybody into the cohort, but I want to honor your individuality at the same time. So if you have other ideas, we can talk about that. Whoops. Oh, so also just some other talkless things. Somebody asked this question, not expecting, TBH not expecting tuition for this program. However, when we do the Hebrew class, if you're doing that, there usually carries a tuition charge for that because there are more materials and things involved in that. And I'm going to invite to participate in this program that if you're not already a member of TBH, to become a member of the synagogue. Both the kind of ideological support of supporting our Jewish community as we go through this process together, and the financial support to sustain this community as well. And as you know, for those who know, nobody is ever turned away for financial reasons. And TBH, if you're new to TBH, operates not under a dues system, but under a pledge system. So we just invite everybody to make an individual pledge that is meaningful to them. So you could reach out to me or Kayla or Tzvi in the office if that's part of it. So I would just invite you to, again, participate, to be a member of the congregation that's doing this program. And so maybe this is not a concern for you. Maybe it's just a concern for me, but I was so overwhelmed. When I put this together, I thought, oh, okay, we'll get 8 to 10 people. It'll be fantastic. And I was like, whoa, we got 30 people, 30 plus interested, which was amazing. And I'm so overjoyed. And I just was thinking logistically, I was like, oh, that's a lot of people with that. So maybe that's not the case, because I know we only have half of that here, and maybe people were interested in and don't want to pursue, and that's fine. So as we're going to take tally of that in the next couple of days, I'm just going to send a Google Doc out to get more confirmation of interest, to see if you're interested in this program, if you're interested in Hebrew, just so I can get some numbers together. But I was just sort of mindful of group size, and so I was thinking to myself, and again, leave this for a group conversation, that we could go through the learning together, but have 2 different services, maybe a service in the spring and a service in the summer or fall, and maybe a group celebration of those 2, so people have more opportunity to participate in the ritual, as opposed to trying to get 30 folks into the one ritual. I am committed to this project. So if you're sitting here and you're like, oh, I'm really interested, but I don't know if I can swing it this year, I'm committed to doing it again next year. So if I'm not forcing, if you want to do it now, great. But if you're like on the fence, I just telling you that I am committed to doing it again. So if there are folks who want to put it off for a year, and we could also work. I know that there were some people who are interested, who are families, some who were parents of kids who are going to have their bar bat mitzvah in the next few years or next year or 2. So I was going to invite people to think creatively, and we could, if you have a child who's going to have a bar bat mitzvah in the next year or so, we could combine it with that. So you can go through the group learning, but then celebrate with your child, which is a nice one. Or, I know there's some families, couples, I don't know, I just think about different ways. So anyway, and those were other thoughts. So that's just on my mind, because I want it to be a meaningful experience for everyone. And again, it could just be my mishigas that I'm worried about everybody, and maybe you're not. That's fine. So that was my spiel. I'm going to pause it here, and open it up to any. I see lots of looks of excitement. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I see some nods and excitement. So this is great. Questions, thoughts, and again, as our starting time, I see this as sort of taking place around the beginning of the new year, the high holidays, so to give us that time to as summer's still hard to schedule stuff. I want to get this going so you can think about it, but then we would start in earnest around the new year. And I did say if this question, just anticipating this question too, about the when, I am planning to put out in that Google Doc a preferred time for the monthly class, which I'm thinking would either trying to just be flexible as possible. And we can talk with the group if we want to maintain it purely virtual, if we want to do some hybrid, and definitely hybrid, whether it be Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, or Sunday evening, or a Monday or Tuesday evening. Those are the best times that work for me. And maybe we could have a little food if we meet hybrid, in person. So, and then I would offer the Hebrew class at an alternate time to that. So probably either the Monday or Tuesday evening would be the Hebrew class. The Hebrew class would meet weekly for about 10 weeks to do the Hebrew, and then we would just pick up trope from that. So that's my spiel. I'm very excited. I hope you are too. And yeah, any questions or thoughts as we lay this out? Oh, it was so comprehensive. It was so fun. Okay, yes, Jackman's, I see you unmute.
I unmuted because I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, that we've talked to a few of the people here about doing this. And two of our concerns with the size of the group and the constitution of the group. I'm thrilled to see all of these faces here. So many that we're getting to know very well, and a few we don't know at all. And I think this looks like a great group. So we're excited about that.
Great. And like I said, I'm willing to work. I did not anticipate the size, which is I kind of envisioned 8 to 10 people, and that would be a good size to do a group ritual. Already like 16 that's here today, and maybe 30 is a lot harder. So we can talk about, I'm sort of leaning towards the idea of doing multiple services, maybe with about the original 8 to 10, like over the course of a few months, maybe have, I don't know, June, July, August or something like that. Or, and then we could have a big celebration in August, in our beautiful brand new courtyard that will be finished. Maybe, I don't know, but and we could have a bark mitzvah too. Look at that right down there.
I love it.
We'll celebrate the bark mitzvah. So that's a whole other program we'll do is with the bark mitzvah. So
Yeah,
maybe that's
unfortunately,
it.
the
Maybe
bar
that's
mitzvah
involving.
boy is deaf and blind, so he won't be barking or
No, we're
chanting.
open to everyone. We can we'll make it a meaningful experience. So maybe that's it. So I appreciate that. That's sort of honesty. And that, different dates might be better for other people. So we can look at that. Other, yeah, Jean.
So tell me again, what happens next?
So I actually have to make this up. No, I'm just kidding. I have to so what I'm going to do is just, so this was kind of like the orientation. I didn't expect, maybe, I went into it with the intention, the kavanah, that maybe, everybody, I collected interest, right? There were like 30 plus people who were interested. Some people couldn't be here, so I'm going to send them the recording. And then I'm going to send in the next couple of days the recording to those who could make it, and to everybody a Google Doc that will ask you to really register, I guess. To sort of say, okay, I want to do this. And so here's my name. Here's my preferred time for meeting. And we'll probably and also if you're interested in the Hebrew and or the trope, just so I can get numbers together as well. And probably when I do the Hebrew class, it's going to be open to the congregation. So there might be folks in there who aren't doing the adult B'nai Mitzvah program, but that's fine. It's all the same. Hebrew's the same. So But that's my next goal. And then once I have a sense of if there's a, I'm going to ask people to really choose times and days of those kind of 5-ish options, any and all that work for you. And once I get all that feedback, to really set a schedule and send out a syllabus and sort of some of the more concrete things. That's why I kind of left it sort of broad strokes tonight. So yeah, Leslie.
Since we're people of the book, will there be reading things that you're thinking of us sort of along the way?
Yes, I'm sort of gone, and maybe I'm buying myself a little time, because I was sort of going back and forth. Do we want to just work with one book together? Because there are some good broad sort of not intro to Judaism type books, but Judaism as a spiritual practice type books and things. Or do we want to sort of, will I collect readings and kind of for each one? So I haven't fully decided yet. I'm still sort of playing around with that in my mind, which is, again, maybe one of the other reasons I kept it in broad strokes. I mean, I have general sense about what I want to do together and what topics I want to explore together. I just haven't decided if I want us all to, say, get one book or readings. But yeah, there'll definitely be some. We are the people of the book, so we have to engage with it. At least the Torah. That's one. That's one. Any other? Michelle.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Rabbi, will you let us know along the way how many people are enrolled and if, I mean, would you arbitrarily break us up into groups or can we choose who we want to be? I mean, I have friends here that we discussed doing this together.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that as well. I think that if there's, and also too, if there's, right, if you're joining this with the intention of doing it with some people that and then we could create groups that way, I wasn't going to arbitrarily do it. Again, when I was putting this together, I hadn't even anticipated this issue. Maybe that was just my own, I don't know, humility or naivete. But no. So we will, we could.
It's been quite a weekend of a lot of people participating, hasn't it? It's fantastic.
It's been great, and I know you've all shared. I haven't heard each of your sharings with the groups, but I can imagine that, I think that, especially coming out of the pandemic, we've all had a lot of time to sit around and think maybe, and we're all kind of on our journeys, and maybe everything came together, and this is an opportunity to do that. Oh yeah, that's good. A reading list. I can put something like that together. So, excuse me. Yeah, other questions, thoughts, praise, laudatory comments. Nice. Well, I went a little bit over. So great to see you all. I could send you the recording too if you want to just look at this again. I could also send out my PowerPoint if you wanted to just look at those again. And I'm going to reach out, like I said, as in response to Jean's question, I'm going to send out in the next few days. I could probably just even drop it in. Well, no, I want to sort of refine the form a little bit. A Google form that'll just be the kind of formal registration where I'll invite you to just your name, like what your preferred time is. If you want to if you're interested in Hebrew, if you're interested in trope, and also other things like that. I did mention along the way, like there's this, and also sort of intake, like if there are other aspects to this that you were interested in exploring, sort of take on a bit of learning and just sort of do some intake that way. And, it's with the goal of starting kind of in a month's time, so as after Labor Day, after the close to the high holiday, around the beginning of the new year. and that. All right. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. I'm very excited to learn with all of you and to learn from all of you, and for all of us to learn together and to have a wonderful experience. So thank you. Thank you. This is a gift to me too. So wonderful. All right. Have a great rest of your evening. Enjoy. Great August, and we'll be in. Yeah. If you have any questions, feel free to email me and look for that Google Doc in the next couple of days. So have a great night, everybody.